You might recognize these two faces. On the left is Natalee Holloway, who went missing back in 2005. And on the right, Joran Sloot, who is long rumored to have been the person who killed Natalee Holloway. But in those almost 20 years, we never knew how. We never knew what happened on that night. Until now, until today. Because they've just released the confession from Joran Sloot. And I'm going to warn you, it's a lot. There's a lot to take in here, but I'm going to read it to you uncensored just as it is in this exhibit. We now have some closure, at least, for Natalee Holloway's mother, who has been waiting for all these years to know what happened to her daughter. And Joran Sloot, if you don't know about him, is basically one of the worst people on planet Earth. He got away with, seemingly, the murder of Natalee Holloway back in 2005. And then 5 years later, to the day, he killed Stephanie Flores Ramirez in a hotel in Lima, Peru. Why? Because she found out his dirty secret. She found out that Joran Sloot killed Natalee Holloway. And in his reaction to that, he responded with violence and killed her too. 5 years to the day, which is pretty wild to think about. So here is the confession before we get to the response from Natalee Holloway's mother. This is the actual confession from Joran Sloot, and he's where you see JVDS. Butler is the person that he's confessing to. So he says, plus, she asked me to go back to her hotel, but I was just trying to get dropped off a little bit further away from her hotel so we could walk back to the hotel and I might still get a chance to be with her. Butler says, okay. Joran Sloot says, that's what I was hoping for. Butler says, okay, what happened? Yeah, and Deepak drops me off at another place, a little right of the Marriott Hotel, known as the Fisherman's Huts. This place is not so far from the next hotel, which is a Marriott, and the next hotel after that is another Marriott, which is a timeshare, and then it's the Holiday Inn. Anyways, he says, we walk along the beach. And Butler says, do Deepak and Satish get out? Do they come with you, or what happens? Joran Sloot says, no, Deepak and Satish leave. They leave and go back to their home. I assume they go back to their home, he says. He says, I'm actually with Natalee walking along the beach. I find a space before we get to the Marriott Hotel where I lay her down. We lay down together, he says, in the sand. We start kissing each other. I get her to kiss me again, and we start kissing each other. And I start feeling her up again, and she tells me no. So clearly we now have Natalee Holloway telling him no to stop. He admits, though, he says, she tells me she doesn't want to feel her up. I insist. I keep feeling her up either way. She knees me. She ends up kneeing me in the crotch. If you're a dad, you've probably told your daughter to do this. If somebody touches you and you say no, and they keep going, hit them right in the crotch with your knee as hard as you possibly can. She may have heard that from her father, because that's how Natalee Holloway responded when he wouldn't stop touching her. He responds by getting up on the beach and kicking her extremely hard in the face. He says, yeah, she's laying down unconscious, possibly even dead, but definitely unconscious. I see right next to her, there's a huge cinder block lying on the beach, and you can kind of see where this is going. Butler says, when you say cinder block, are we looking at the ones like in the walls of this place? He says, exact same cinder blocks. I see a huge cinder block laying on the beach. This is where it gets really rough, folks. He says, I take this and I smash her head in with it completely. Her face basically, collapses in. Even though it's dark, I can see her face is collapsed in. Afterwards, I don't exactly know what to do. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I decide to take her and put her into the ocean. So I grab her and I walk her into the ocean and I push her off. And I walk about up to my knees in the ocean and I push her into the sea. After that, I got out and I walked home. This, finally, the confession from Joran Sloot, and a very grisly description of what he says happened to Natalee Holloway. Her mother, for what it's worth, responded to this in a very interesting way. Her mother seemed to be just glad to be free of it, to finally get the vindication of defeat over Joran Sloot and be able to come to terms with what happened to her daughter. It was the closure that she needed. Here she is at a press conference talking about it.
Today, I can tell you with certainty that after 18 years, Natalee's case is solved. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. It's over. Joran Sloot is no longer the suspect in my daughter's murder. He is the killer.
So she says he is the killer. Clearly, she's happy to have this all wrapped up. But do you believe him? Do you think this is actually the truth about what happened that night? Or do you think he's just continuing to lie as he has throughout this whole process? My gut tells me the guy's at the end of the road. He knows he's got so many court cases against him. He's just got to fess up to this and admit it already. But is it true that his friends weren't there? Or maybe they were a little bit more involved in this than he's saying, and he doesn't want to throw them under the bus? Those are the big questions we have moving forward. Now this case, after almost 20 years, can finally be wrapped up. What do you think? Is this what you expected happened between the two of them? Or did you think it was something different entirely? And what do you think the punishment should be for Joran van der Sloot and what he did to Natalee Holloway? Let me know.